Welcome to the Prophecy Club. I've got Bree Keyton in studio today. We're going to continue talking about her brand new DVD that she just made this past Sunday, and I have to say, I'm impressed with it. I'm also going to be honest with you, I was a little wondering just how good it was going to be, but I want to reassure you folks out there, this one is a keeper. This one you will be glued to. You will really like this. It helps you to understand where we are today and where we are going. Bree's mother was actually a descendant of the patriot, Patrick Henry. She reveals shocking, never released family, private records, and bloodlines to give you the true story of how God used Patrick Henry to save America and how it parallels how God is using Donald Trump to save America today. Once again, Bree Keyton, Dr. Bree Keyton, holds 2 doctorates, prayer walked 50 countries spanning 6 continents, rescued and led over 70,000 pygmies to Jesus, author of 8 books and 10 DVDs. We're going to let her talk about Patrick Henry and Trump. Welcome to the Prophecy Club.
Oh, thanks for having me on today.
All right. So tell us about Patrick Henry as it relates to Trump.
Well, there are so many similarities that I was really struck that it was important to let people know that the beginnings of our country, which the founding fathers, such a blessing that they stood for righteousness and liberty back in a day when so much wickedness was going on in our country. And the horrible King George III was literally destroying the colonies that he helped create by excessive abuses and overtaxing and all the horrors he was perpetrating on them. It was happening in that day, but it's also been happening in this day. So I wanted to compare our country at the beginning and our country now. And then who were the leaders? Well, the leader of that day, which has been basically erased from our history books, was Patrick Henry. And other people were given credit for the things he did and the accomplishments that he gave us as a gift from God, because he was a gift from God to us, just like Trump is a gift from God to us. Trump stood against the whole world. When he started running for president, there were 17 men on that stage. And he trumped them all, didn't he? He made it through. He was the last man standing, you might say. And it was the same for Patrick Henry. He was the premier patriot. He is the single guy who came out and said, we are going to defy King George. We're not going to pay that stamp tax. We're not going to pay the Justice Act, which they called the Murder Act, because the soldiers that King George foisted on the people of the day of Patrick Henry were murdering, slaughtering, stealing, raping, and King George made a law that they couldn't even be tried by the colonists. They were going to be removed to a secret location and tried by the royalists, which means they were going to get off. And so there were a lot of things Patrick Henry said, we will not tolerate this. And his voice was the strongest, the most amazing voice. If you read all the comments about him, they said, we cannot believe what an amazing voice he had. It was so intense and powerful and musical and filled with scripture. We've never heard anything like this. Well, we can say a lot about Trump too. Donald Trump, when he speaks, when he has those rallies, it is amazing. Have you ever seen anything like that? People are cheering and screaming. What do you think?
You know, the very first rally that he held, where there was like 30,000 people, as I recall, it was down in Atlanta. When I thought, he got 30,000 people to a meeting, I thought, this guy's going to be president. And I may have missed one, but I don't think, at least I tried not to miss any of them. Every time he speaks at a rally, I go back and I listen to every word of it. And I just love the guy. I think he is the best thing that we have had in my lifetime.
He struck a chord. Okay.
Yeah.
He struck a chord, and he spoke at a time that was timely, if I can say it like that. People were upset with the way the government was going. And while they were actually afraid to speak out because of the surveillance society we're under, he struck a chord. He had the courage to yell, make America great again. And the other things he has yelled, and then the things he's spoken, and people have caught it and run with it. It was exactly the same in the day of Patrick Henry. See, people were afraid to speak because King George quartered soldiers in people's homes. And they would eat up all their food. They would spy on them. They would take from them. They'd kick them out of their own beds, and they'd sleep. And the colonists were being horribly abused. And then they'd steal their money. They'd steal everything. And one of the things they did was spy on them. Then the soldiers were ordered to do these things by King George, who was a mad king. He was actually literally insane. And I can prove all that in my speech. I talk about it and who King George really was. King George.
But a lot of that sounds like today.
Okay, but it is worse. It's so much worse. So the soldiers would be in their homes spying on them.
But see, that's what they're doing through our phone systems today, and our satellites and our TV, and
the internet, our refrigerators, our Fitbits, which we put on when
I just got an article this morning. If you take a photo with your cell phone, that it logs on the photo your GPS location, and they can go back and find out where that photo was taken within a few feet.
That's right.
Same thing is happening.
So, every aspect of our lives is being surveilled, and then we're being prosecuted for those things. And, there are court cases. What you said on the internet, what you said in social media, where you were by your Fitbit or your phone, and this kind of thing. So, actually, what I'm trying to tell you is, back in the day of Patrick Henry, they didn't have all the tech stuff we have now, but it was the same. The soldiers would just walk down the street and just stab somebody and get away with it. And they'd be in a person's home spying on every word they said in the privacy of their own home. And then the soldiers would report it to the authorities. They'd come drag a colonist out of his own house, jail him, and hang him. So, or draw and quarter him, whatever they wanted to do. And so they were being spied at to a level that no one had ever seen before in the colonies, because the people there came there to be free and to have liberty. And King George gradually, like a frog in water, not realizing they're being boiled until it's too late. And this is what happened. There was one man, one voice, one mighty anointed man, and his name was Patrick Henry. And he stood up against all odds in the House of Burgesses, which the common people elected him to be. Everybody else in there was a royalist and a Tory. He was the one voice of the people. And against all odds and against every voice and every person, he stood up for the common people and said, we need to come against King George. And he made a famous speech, Caesar has his Brutus. And then that's the quote everybody knows, but he said we need to stand against King George and we will not pay that stamp back. You know what they did? They stood up screaming treason, treason, treason against him.
Against Patrick Henry.
Yes. But it happened over and over to him because he was such a strong voice for the people.
Okay, let me get this straight.
This is what I love about Trump.
See, they're doing the same thing to Trump. Okay, so
yes.
the people in America were standing up against Patrick Henry, saying treason, treason, and today the people in America, many of them Democrats, are standing up and saying pretty much the same thing. Mm-hmm. And in other words, the people are divided in America. It's so much. History has repeated itself again in Trump today.
Well, the spirit of division is being deliberately perpetrated, and here's how they're doing it. They're actually paying and training people. They have all these schools, 250 at the last count I heard, where they are paying people and training them to be Antifa and others, and their only goal is to divide America. So how do they do it? They train the blacks to hate the whites and to start protesting. Okay, but really we were doing pretty well before the last administration. We were getting better and better in America. Sure, I know there are problems, but peace was was being generated in so many ways. Now it's not. They're deliberately bringing division. Then they tried to turn the rich against the poor, and they started screaming and screaming about the 1%, let's get them, and all this. Well, honestly, the same thing was happening the day of Patrick Henry. They were turning the blacks against the whites in that day, and King George was doing it. And they were turning the rich against the poor in that day. So when you have division, you can divide and you can conquer, can't you? And now in this day, they're turning women against men and making women hate men. And the Me Too movement is part of that, because there's an underlying hatred of men in that movement. And so we're really getting so crazy with it. They're trying to change our language and teach us you can't say this, you can't say that. All these things were happening the day of King George. King George said you can't say this and you can't say that. So to be a preacher, you had to get a license. And when you got a license, King George told you what you could preach and what you couldn't preach, what you could say and not say. And the colonists were commanded, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. King George made it illegal to have public meetings. If you were caught having a public meeting, you all went to jail. So you see, he was trying to cut people off and divide them so that he could keep control. And that's everything that's happening now happened in the day
That's
of
what
Patrick
amazed me. It was just like
Yes.
point for point for point for
Yes.
point. I sat there and said, really? Really?
I
We're
laid it
doing
out
the same
for
thing
you.
today.
I laid it out for you
Yeah.
in this speech, like I don't think anyone's ever
No,
done.
No. This is way beyond Fox News. This is way. Look, if you want to understand what's going on, I'm just going. It's worth the $30. Okay, I mean, help a ministry, help yourself, get the DVD.
Please get it, because it'll change your
Absolutely.
life. My real motive was to turn people back to our Lord Jesus Christ and Him crucified, because Patrick Henry was such a amazing, strong Christian. And in the last interview yesterday, I went into some depth about how George Whitefield, one of the great awakening revivalists of the first Great Awakening, taught young Patrick Henry, and his own pastor Davies, who was just a strong, born-again revivalist. But in this day, you see, Donald Trump is getting some tutelage from some strong Christians now that are actually pouring their hearts and their prayers into and over the man, to just pray a covering over him from the Lord. He needs it. He needs it. Do you know King George put a price on Patrick Henry's head from the moment he stood up to King George, saying, we will not pay that stamp tax, nor will we buy anything else from Great Britain. And so, actually, Britain had locked everything up. I want you to hear this in context of
This kind of
today.
sounds like our out of balance trade acts going on right now.
Okay, then that's where I'm headed.
Yes.
I lay it out a little better than we'll have time to do today in the speech, so I want them to listen. But back in that day, Great Britain cut off the colonies, all of them, and they could only trade through Britain. So when they sold their goods, it was to Britain with a huge tariff as they sold it. Mm-hmm. Then they could only buy from Britain. So there were huge tariffs on it when they bought. And they could only buy their cloth, their coffee, their tea, every single thing was an export or an import with tariffs on both sides. And the colonists were getting crushed in the middle, yet they were having no benefit from it. They could not buy from another source to get a cheaper price.
Sounds like today, it sounds like what Trump is trying to do.
He's trying to deliver us from this evil, isn't he?
Well, that's what's so amazing. I mean, to me, I thought your talk put words, that's not the right way, it put shoes on the feet of what they're doing today. I could see what they're doing, but I didn't have words, the ways to explain it. And even here, just in this talk, is like, I know what's happening. People are listening, and they're saying, yes, that's exactly what they're doing today.
Yes.
Oh, you get the DVD. You're going to be shouting at that DVD and saying, yes, that's what they're doing.
They're going to share it with everybody, I hope.
Yeah.
Because
it'll
it'll cause you to want to love your country again, to want to see what we were founded with, the desires to be free and to have liberty.
I'm going to challenge. If you do not like Trump, you get this DVD. If you want to see America continue, get this DVD. If you want to understand the things that we're seeing that we can't seem to see. That's kind of hard to explain. In other words, like, what is going on with the immigration? If you want to really understand behind it and the people behind it and the people behind them, she explains it because it's all in the history of the past. And they're just, history repeats itself, but you can see deeper into what is going on now. This is better than Fox News. This is better than his tweets. I mean, you will understand, you'll be amazed at what you'll learn in this talk. Not about Patrick Henry, yes, you will, but about what is happening in your world today. You will say, oh, my goodness. Yeah, you're going to love this.
Well, I want to tell them something. Let me just read this.
Go for
just straight out of my speech here, so they'll get some small taste of the amazing person that we can call Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry was a patriot, a warrior, a politician, a circuit rider, a preacher. He was so much more than people ever knew. But he was called, literally called, and this is historical record, the first among the patriots. Now, you never read that in your history book, did you? He was also called the voice of resistance because he was the first to speak out against the wicked King George III. He was called the Lion of Liberty. So he was such a lion when he spoke. He was so powerful with his speech and his dynamics. He was also called the Son of Thunder, because when he spoke, his voice would thunder, and sometimes it would literally thunder and lightning outside when he spoke out of a clear sky. So it was like the power of God was flowing through the man because he was such a strong, anointed preacher. He was known as America's best defense attorney, and he never lost a case. He was known as the first to break the power of the aristocracy over the colonies. And Lord Byron, who was a famous poet from Europe, everybody's heard of Lord Byron, he called him the forest-born Demosthenes. And Demosthenes was a heroic figure from the Greek legends, and he defended the Greeks against Alexander the Great and helped them keep their liberty. And so to be called a forest-born Demosthenes was a powerful compliment from a European. And there are many more. I could just go for a long, long time, the things that were said about him. But this I thought was interesting. This is a quote. Henry disarmed the powerful and empowered the weak and defenseless. Doesn't that sound like Trump?
That sounds like Trump.
And the poor only wanted the right to hunt, fish, farm, and live as they saw fit, but Henry was their champion. So I see Trump like that. He's very much like that. And God has given us this gift, just as God gave us Patrick Henry, a man who stood up for the rights of people who could not stand for themselves. So God has given us Trump, and he's doing much the same. You see, Henry would go out, and when he got his law degree, he was actually homeschooled. And so everything he was taught at home. So he went off and he spent 2 weeks. This should give you an idea of the brilliance of the man. He studied for 2 weeks at one of the universities because his father couldn't afford to send him to the wealthy places like Jefferson and Washington. But he went 2 weeks, learned everything he needed to know, took his law exam, and passed. Now, who can do that?
Wow.
Nobody.
Yeah.
But you see, he was well prepared because God's hand was on him. And when he spoke, it was as if the anointing of God just flowed through him like a river. Amazing man. He was also called the first of the founding fathers. How about that? The first. You see, you never told this. But he would go get on his horse, and he loved his musket. It was said of him, he loved that gun. And he never went anywhere without his gun. And he would shoot supper and bring it home.
Well, that sounds like Trump, too.
I know. I know. But King George tried to take the guns. Because when you disarm a people, you can control a people.
That's right.
The only reason the left wants the guns taken is so they can take over and control.
That's right.
They can't take a people, they can't control. And I want to give a couple examples since we somehow segued into that. you know that the reason the Japanese in World War II did not attack our mainland is that they admitted after the war was over that they knew every house was armed and they would have to fight door to door, and they knew they couldn't do it. So it was because the American people were armed that the Japanese never fought them. And then I want to say something about Australia. At some point several years back, the government decided they would disarm the Australian people. And so they did. They had them all come and burn their guns and weapons in the middle of town, of every township all over Australia. The next day, and from there on, violent crime and murders quadrupled. Because when you disarm the people, the criminals are still armed.
Right.
They have unregistered guns. They have guns nobody knows about, and they can get the guns because they have connections. They have guns, and then the poor people who need to defend their families cannot.
Right.
So it's a horrible, horrible mistake to disarm a good and godly people who only wish to maybe shoot a squirrel for supper or kill a deer so they'll have meat through the winter. But that's back in Henry's day, and defend themselves from the Indians and the attackers and the French and whoever else. There would be no way to defend themselves. But King George disarmed the people.
Let me say something about that. If someone, I remember there was some fellow on Fox News that says, and just why do you need an AR-15 to go hunting deer? Oh, I'd like to answer that. I would say, well, first of all, I don't want an AR-15 to go hunting deer. If I'm going to go hunting deer, I would take a 30-06 or something similar. I use an AR-15 when evil tyrants send their people after me and my family. I want to be able to repel anything the evil elite send at me. So anything you give the evil elite, I should be able to get too. That includes AR-15s, bump stocks, bazookas, or whatever it's going to take to repel the evil coming after me. In other words, I don't want guns to go hunting deer. Patrick Henry didn't want a gun because he wanted to go deer hunting.
Well, he had a musket.
But you understand what I'm saying? In other words, forget this idea, we need to have guns so we can go hunting. Baloney. We want to have guns so that evil people, tyrants, world government people, evil elite, international bankers cannot kill us and take us over and cannot force us, well, to take the mark of the beast.
Okay. Well, we have to consider in this day, because the left is attacking day and night to take away our Bill of Rights. They chip and chip and chip at it. They use every disaster to run forward and say, oh, we got to take everything from you. Well, yes, we know they want to take everything from us because they want to destroy and conquer. They want to be tyrants. And at some point we have to say, no, no, no.
Well, I think what we need to say is, okay, you know what? I've got a solution for you.
And let me put in here, it's not even about guns. We've gotten off on this. It's about liberty.
Well, to the person that wants to say, we need to turn in our guns, I'd say, I have a solution for you. There is over 100 countries out there. Probably the truth is, out of the 189, probably 188 of them don't allow guns. I haven't done my research, but I'm just guessing. I'm probably right. So if you want to live in a country that doesn't have guns, move there.
Yeah, just move.
Yeah, and by the way, while we're on that, we may as well say one more thing, and that is, I wish Trump would say, by the way, I'm declaring this a Christian nation, and if you don't want to be in a Christian nation, if you want to be a Muslim, there's several wonderful Muslim nations out there. Move. If you want to be a Buddhist, there's several Buddhist nations out there. Move.
If
but
you
this
like
nation,
it so much, go there.
That's right. That's okay. But don't try to make this nation a Muslim or a Buddhist or an atheist or a non-gun or a communist. If you want to be a communist, fine, be a communist. But be a communist in another nation. Don't try to make this democratic, this capitalistic nation a communist nation. Hit the road.
Well, you know, in a lot of ways, I think they've brainwashed all the kids.
Oh, here, I'm sorry. Let me say that more politically correct. Broaden your horizons.
Oh, well, I really have to say this. Since the beginning of the hippie movement in the 60s, the educational system has deliberately become more and more what they call progressive. But it didn't start in the 60s, it started in the 20s. I mean, I have a lot of degrees, and one of them is education. And it started with a man named Dewey. He was a self-proclaimed progressive. Basically, he was a communist. And he started instigating in the educational system teaching that would change the mindset, even the brain structure of a person to embrace ideas that were not American ideas. So Patrick Henry fought to set us free so we could be a Christian nation. And he fought, remember, for one nation under God, indivisible. And this was Patrick Henry. Henry.
That's one of the things
else.
I was amazed at how many of our foundational phrases and policies and constitutional sentences within our Constitution came from Patrick. Now, I'm going to stop the broadcast. You talk. We're going to have her on again tomorrow. Don't worry, because I want you to take a couple of seconds to just, from your heart, with no notes, why should they get this DVD?
This DVD will rock your world. It'll change your life. It will change the way you think about the founding of America. This is the reason I made it, to turn us back to the Lord, just like Patrick Henry tried to do. And I believe Donald Trump is trying to do that. I can't say it for 100% because I don't know Donald Trump, but it sure seems to me, based on all the Christians he had on that stage at the inauguration and all the preachers and teachers he let preach and teach up there, I believe that's his purpose, is to turn us back into a Christian nation. So this is my purpose, and it's the reason we should get it. We're going to find out all the reasons and all the motives and the ways to turn ourselves back to the Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, and Him crucified.
All right, folks, if you want to get it, it's called Is Trump Our Patrick Henry? Is Trump Our Patrick Henry? prophecyclub.com, gift of $30. Also, I just made the new DVD, which I've changed the name for it because I've got some more new information. The name of it is 17 Revelations in the Feasts and Trumpets. Actually, there's more like 21. 17 Revelations in the Feasts and the Trumpets. The topics are the next anointing of Jesus, seals, trumpets, and vials finally explained, the barley and the wheat harvests, feast revelations in the last 7 months, 6 of the most amazing prophecy charts, and the 3 best New Testament and the 3 best Old Testament verses on the rapture. Both of those available, prophecyclub.com, or by calling 785-266-1112. 785-266-1112. You will really like both of these DVDs. Is Trump Our Patrick Henry? And 17 Revelations in the Feast and Trumpets. Also, I want to encourage you to be a supporter of the Watchman's Trumpet. Essentially, it's a program that'll allow you to view all of our DVDs one of these days when we get it set up, all of them online, but that's not the point. The point is it'll allow you to pre-purchase them and send them out as gifts via email so people can watch them on their computer. And yes, we're not going to make available, I should say, no, we're not going to make available the brand new DVDs on there, because on the Watchman's Trumpet, it's going to be in the ballpark of between $5 to $1 per viewing. Again, the purpose of that one, the Watchman's Trumpet, is to give away viewings of Prophecy Club DVDs. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your gifts of support. God bless.
In many different ways, the enemy is working overtime to destroy your family, job, and America. Your faithful monthly gifts help the Prophecy Club to continue and overcome evil with the truth. Help us take the warning to America. Engage in the battle to win lost souls to Christ by supporting this ministry today.